Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, hi, my name is Melleny. If you'd like to get to know me a little better, all my social media links will be down below in the description bar, so be sure to check that out if you're interested in any kind of way. Today, we are talking about the books that I read in July. Sadly, I didn't conquer my July TBR. I don't know, we all saw this coming. But I'm really happy with the books that I read. I have to be honest with you and say that it was pretty much an averagey kind of month. There were one or two books that I really enjoyed that actually got 5 stars. The rest, not so much, but we're gonna go from top to bottom. As always, the ebook covers will be here on this side so you can have a look at them, as well as the books that I don't have physical copies of. So let's get to it. First book that I read this month was We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faisal. I actually started this in June and ended up finishing it in July. But yeah, so this book follows our two main characters. One is Zafira and the other one is Nazir. And Zafira is the hunter, and she comes from like a group of people who kind of believe that women have set roles and being a hunter is not one of them. So Zafira has to hide that part of her identity. But she also is asked to go on to this huge quest. And one of my favorite lines is that people lived because she killed. So that is what relates to her. And then we also follow another character named Nazir. He is called the Prince of Death, I believe. And his tagline is, people died because he lived. And Nazir is another prominent figure, and he is the other point of view that we have in this book. I really enjoyed it. There were some things that I was quite confused about, especially in the beginning, that I felt like wasn't illustrated well in terms of, for example, let me just give you an example. Because Nazir and Zafira's point of views are alternating, so you always have the one and then the other, we kind of had this moment where Zafira is like, Fallujah is kind of like the most fertile land, but because of the art, their lands have kind of become less fertile. But when you hear it from Zafira's point of view, you hear it as if the land is completely infertile, you cannot grow plants. But then you hear exactly 2 seconds later from Nazir's point of view that the land is still producing product and like produce, I mean. So that was kind of confusing in the sense that it didn't come, like I didn't know which one was true, because you never have like this really cool like moment where you're like, ooh, you kind of like, it's directly after each other, there's kind of jarring and you don't know. So I couldn't quite decide between 4 or 3.75 stars, so it's like, it's around about there. And thank you so much to Curiosity Tales for providing me with a copy. If you would like to see my review, please be sure to check out the Curiosity Tales magazine. And yeah, I think that it was quite a good book. I recommend it. I think the representation was done well, and it was quite an enjoyable read. I mean, if you look at how many like pages I kind of really enjoyed and parts I liked. The next one I read was The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg. This follows our main character, oh my gosh, Anna. And Anna is an android in this place called the Kingdom, where basically all your like fairy tale wishes come true. I really liked this, but I think that the marketing was a bit confusing, if I have to be completely honest, because, you know, when you think about the Kingdom, you literally think your classic fairy tales are being spun on their head, and that's not the case. It just, this Disney-esque place is kind of really crazy. I really actually found myself enjoying it. It has different mixed medias in it. So the story is told from 2 kind of modes. One is through an interview and the other is through Anna's real experience. So I quite liked that. However, I felt like something was missing for me in this book, so I only gave it 3.7 stars, but on Goodreads it translates to 4 stars. The next book that I read was A Bad Breed. This was by Kat Ross. If you don't know, Kat Ross is one of my favorite indie published authors. Her writing is always rich and wowza. I also think in terms of this book, I would highly recommend that you read the other books in the series, because there's a lot of like connections between the first couple of books to this one. This is the 3rd one in the Gaslamp Gothic series. I enjoyed it. I really liked the historical aspect of this book, and once again, this book kind of still follows her creation of the devas, I believe you say is how you say it. I could definitely be wrong. I'm terrible at pronunciation. But I really enjoyed this. I mean, it was interesting. I did find that some parts of it did get a little long-winded because it's like, okay, can you get to the point now kind of thing? But it was still enjoyable. If you haven't had the chance to pick up a Cat Ross book, you need to pick it up. I promise you it will be worth it. I then finally picked up Evermore by Sarah Holland, which is the sequel to Everlist. Everlist follows our main character Jules. I'm just gonna give you like a brief synopsis of the first one. And Jules is forced to work at Everlist, which is kind of like this huge estate. And this world is run by blood coins, which is kind of time. You're it's basically what it sounds like. If you have a lot of blood coins, you're rich, you live for a very, very long time. If you're poor, you die from your time running out. This was a cool sequel. I really liked it, but some parts felt too long, whereas other parts felt a little too short for me. But at the end of the day, I gave it 3.6 stars. I thought it was still a really good conclusion at the end of the day. Okay, the next couple ones are kind of like ebooks, so bear with me, please. So the next book I read was Stranger Rituals. So this follows a main character who is kind of unique to her world, and this book was sold or like marketed as a dark fantasy. You definitely had those elements of this dark fantasy coming through, but I think the author was trying a bit too hard to be grotesque, and it didn't come across that way. Her book felt like some moments were a bit too comedic for that to truly come across well, but I do have a review up for this, so if you want to see my more in-depth thoughts and like more like fresh and true, like applicable, like that kind of stuff, check out my blog. I think I gave this book 3 stars. It was good. I'm interested enough to continue with it, but I will say that the ending of this book sounded a little too familiar for me, that I kind of like I stopped, I reread a couple of sentences, and I was like, okay then. So if you read the book, you kind of know what I mean by this. I don't recommend this for people who are sensitive to violence, who are triggered by violence, because there's a lot of on-page violence, and also our main character goes through a traumatic, kind of off-page but flashback traumatic experience with one of the characters. So please be wary when going into the book. So the next book that I read was Amid Stars and Darkness by Channy Lynn Feener. This is a reread for me. I read this quite a while ago, but I was doing a blog tour for the 3rd book and I needed to do a little bit of a refresher for me. This book was still really as good as what I remember it to be, but I did take off a star, I believe. I think I took off like, I think I gave it like almost 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars now. It's good, really good, quick series, very YA. But it's still a very enjoyable series nonetheless, and I do recommend it to people. The next book is Between Frost and Fury. That's the 2nd book to Amid Stars and Darkness by Channy Lynn Feener. This book was by far my favorite in the series. Solid effort on that one. I gave it 4.5, I believe. It is such a good freaking book. Loved it. You definitely need to read it to get to the 2nd book, because oh my goodness. Oh, I ship a certain couple. You'll know, when you read it, you'll know which ones I ship. But I really liked the way that we got to explore a little bit more of that relationship, so it's good. And then the next book I read was Within Ash and Stardust, which is the 3rd book in that series. This was not my favorite. No, okay, that's I liked this book. I really liked the ending, because I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to happen, and it happened that way. So I felt like the author was really true to what the fan base was asking, and I loved that, because I would have hated if she ended up with a different guy. I just want to say that, because you know what, at the end of the day, that's just how I felt. I wasn't like, the 2nd book really pushed me in a certain direction, and I'm glad that she kept going in that direction. I think I gave 3.75 stars to this. Once again, I have a review up for this, so you can go and check out my thoughts on that book. This series, really good. Highly recommend it if you want something quick and easy. I pretty much read the entire series within about 3 to 4 days. The next book that I read was Magic Heist. I didn't actually get far into this book. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I have nothing against it. It was like the wrong time kind of situation. The next book that I read was The Grace Year by Kim Leggett. This was one of my anticipated reads for the year. I will say I was kind of let down by this book. I felt like, I don't know, a lot of things happened that I felt like, I don't know, that's how I feel about this book, is I don't know, there were some really good moments, but there were some really moments. This book is so slow paced. If you are ready to sit through a 400-page book that is slow, I highly recommend it then, because I think you might enjoy it. But for me, a lot of the things happened in the last 100 pages, and that annoyed the bejesus out of me. So yeah, it was okay. Would I read it again? No. Would I buy myself a copy? No. But I'm happy that I read it nonetheless. The next book that I read was I Hate Fairyland by Scotty Young. This book was wow. I really loved this graphic novel. There were just one or two things that I had a problem with, but they're not necessarily big problems, they're just preferences. So for this, I gave a solid 4 stars because, you know, you gotta give it, man. It was so good. If you like funny and grotesque and, you know, all of that, and the spin on what the traditional like fairy tale books are like, highly recommend it. Honestly, it was so good. The one thing I wanted a little bit that I think this book needed was kind of a bit more, because this is directed toward adult audiences. I wouldn't recommend this for a younger reader. I mean, it would be cool if they're teens, like I think this would be fine for a teenager, like an older teen. But one thing that I wish was included was the fight scene with this guy. I just felt as if that was really needed in this edition, and like in that volume, or in this volume and that issue. Yeah, but so good. Definitely gonna get the next couple of volumes, because this was something. The next book that I read was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Oh my goodness, if you haven't picked up this book, you need to. I mean, I almost cried, and I mean, I was sitting there, like tears brimming in my eyes at some point. Other times I was laughing my ass off. The next time I was like, oh my god, this is so cute. It is my only 5-star read for this month. Honestly, after Illuminate, 5 stars are rare to come by, but this book snatched that 5-star like nobody's business. You need to read it. Yes, you have no excuses. It is so freaking good. Yes. The next book that I read straight after that, unfortunately, was Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I probably shouldn't have read it because I think at that moment in time, I was actually feeling like reading something with a little more cutesy in it. But Aurora Rising is actually a really good book. It is a great sci-fi, but I did feel as if there were one too many point, like not one too, but like a couple, like there were too many point of views. There are 7 point of views in this book, and for me, it did not do this book any justice. It didn't help the storyline. It didn't help the world building. I feel like it took away from the world building. I would have recommended 3 point of views: Ari, Tyler, and Finian. Finian for the comic relief, and Tyler and Ori because they're main characters and they're like important figures. For this book, I don't know, I was very hyped up for this book. Everyone was like, this book is amazing, but I only gave it 3.6 stars. Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I still recommend that you read it. I think it's going to be a really good series, and like the last 100 pages had me engrossed and I couldn't stop reading it, so I do recommend that you pick it up. And then the last book that I read in July was The Cruel Prince. Yes, I finally picked up The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is the first book in the Folk of the Air series. Okay, let's just have a minute. I rated it 3 stars. Yes, I'm a middle person, but I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. I didn't think, there were some points where I was like, okay, Holly, pick up the pace, and other times where I was like, this is so cool. I definitely think that she should have brought the political intrigue a lot sooner, especially that which involves Jude. I did not like the thing that happened between her and her sister. if you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. I felt like that was a bit, as someone who is a sibling to some degree, that didn't make sense to me. But apparently if I read the apologetic letter that is sent, I would understand a little bit more, but I would still hate the character, the sister. But yeah, I'm really excited because the last 100 pages of this book really grips you once again, like Aurora Rising. It grips you, it pulls you in, and it makes you want to read the next one, because that is so difficult to do. But I think also I was gonna definitely give up on this book, but I think because of the hype, I definitely continued. But yeah, I recommend picking it up. Just for like interest's sake, to see if you like it or not. I will be picking up The Wicked King as soon as I'm financially able to do so, because the trade is very expensive. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna pick it up because I think it's gonna be interesting. I'm really intrigued though, because The Wicked King is so much shorter, and that is also one of the things with these books. Even though they're such short books, the beginning is too long, the ending is too like quick, if that makes sense. I wanted more of the ending, less of the beginning. But yeah, so these are all the physical books that I read. I kind of, as you can see, there's kind of like a theme. A lot of them are dark books, but yeah, I'm really happy that I read these books. At least I know what I feel about them now. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Please let me know what you read this month that you really enjoyed. What was your 5-star read, or what was your highest rated book this month? I'm really intrigued. Please let me know, and I will see you in the next video.